Hey everybody, welcome to my second learning teaching interaction. I want to start out by asking you a question. I want you to think about these answers and keep them in mind as we go throughout this discussion. So have you ever had a teacher that you just loved? What was it that made that teacher so great, and what was your experience like in their class? How did that relationship affect your ability to learn? In chapter 5 of our text, it states, the relationship matters more than the technique. Chances are that this great teacher that you had was a master at developing a relationship with his or her students. And we're going to be discussing today some ways that we can become a more effective teacher and how we can develop that relationship with our students as well. The first thing I want to talk about was component display theory. There were a couple of things that stood out to me. The first were the expository instances. And if you remember, these were examples that you used throughout your lesson that help illustrate major points. What I liked about these were they helped the learners see how abstract principles that we're teaching can apply to their real life. And these also make learning much more interesting. As I was reading this, I was thinking of conference talks and how much I appreciate those personal stories that the apostles and church leaders share with us. They really do help us apply that principle to a real life situation, and they're so much more interesting. And so I think those are important that we're using those in our lessons. The second thing that stood out to me were the inquisitory generalities. And if you remember, this is asking the audience to restate back to what that principle was in their own words. And I think this is really important because it helps us to understand when we restate something in our own words. And it said that the individuals may capture the part of the principle that they're ready to live. What an important thing to help them clue into that principle that they're ready to start applying. And another part of component theory that stood out to me was that we need to, as family life educators, use existing knowledge as the foundation for knowledge. We need to think about what our audience knows and then build on that. And as I was reading that, I thought of scripture in Alma chapter 18, and this is Ammon when he's teaching King Lamoni. If you remember, King Lamoni was the king of the Lamanites, and so Ammon, before he can even teach King Lamoni, asks a very simple question to kind of find out where he is and what can he build on as he's teaching him. And so the first question he asks is, believest thou that there is a God? And of course, King Lamoni says, I don't know what you mean. So he didn't understand God. And then Ammon said, believest thou that there is a great spirit? So he was able to kind of see where King Lamoni was and build on that. And of course, King Lamoni says yes, and he is able to tell him that this is God. And if you read these chapters in Alma chapter 18, 24 to 33, you'll see how he builds on every little piece of knowledge that King Lamoni has. I just think that's a great example for us of how we can build on the knowledge of our audience. And it also talked about how important it is to find a balance between teacher participation and student participation. And I liked that it doesn't have to necessarily be equal time, but there does need to be a balance. You know, we don't need to be the ones doing all the talking. And so part of that, we can ask thought-provoking questions. And the text stated to ask questions that have different answers. And I also think that it's important to, when we're asking these questions, to give the audience enough time to really discuss the issues and not try to rush it because we want to get through our lesson plan. I think if we stay on a single point longer than we wanted, but you know, a good conversation is going on and people are engaged, then I think it's important that we just let it go. Another thing that really stood out to me was how important it is to establish a relationship between the instructor and the participant. We talked about this in the very beginning, that question that I asked you. And it said that this might actually be more important than the lesson. So I was thinking about that. I want to ask you, and I've thought about this as well, but what things can you do to establish a relationship with your participants? So I've got a little list here that I'd like to share. I think one of the first things we can do is take just a moment to introduce ourselves to our audience. I think that puts them at ease, and I think it helps people if they feel like they have a little bit of a relationship with you. And this shouldn't just be one-sided. So take a few moments to get to know some of your participants, find out what their names are, how many kids they are, how long they've been married. Yeah, asking a few simple questions, I think, can kind of open that door and help you establish a relationship. I think it's good to share personal experiences throughout the lesson. Let them know you're human. Hey, you've made mistakes and you've learned from them. We can share those. We can listen and respond respectfully to their comments. I think it's important to smile and have fun. And I think that really sets the stage for our workshop. And along with that, I think maybe not just asserting yourself as the authority, but being more a facilitator of the discussion. And along with that, the text talked about using skilled language, which was recognizing that people do what they do for reasons that make sense to them. And so we really do need to respect their responses and their feelings about things. And I also thought it was important that we walk around and we engage with the audience, depending on the format, of course, of the workshop. But I think standing behind a desk or something is kind of a barrier. So getting out there and really engaging with the audience, I think, is important. And finally, I just wanted to mention that the text stated, or the gospel learning part of our reading talked about how it's really the student's responsibility to learn. And this made me think of that quote, "You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink." We can try to engage and stimulate our audience and help them maintain participation and aid in their participation of discussions, but really is their responsibility. And it said, "The wise teacher looks for ways to rekindle interest and enthusiasm several times during the class." So we really do need to be engaged and involved in this process. So in conclusion, we need to love and care for those that we teach. And I think that whether we're teaching a family life education workshop or a Sunday school lesson, we can seek the Spirit to guide us. And as we teach with the Spirit, we can say and do those things that would enhance the learning of our audience and help them to feel more at ease and establish that relationship with them. Thanks for watching.